All right, welcome back, misfits and underdogs, dogs, to Mask, Chapter 2. Let's get into it. All right, Chapter 2. Getting to the San Gabriel Mountains, you follow Highway 66 due to west from Azusa. Sorry, I'm going to just say the writing is super small in this book. That's why I'm squinting and kind of slowing the roll here. So let's just restart that because the last book, it wasn't this small. You gotta adjust to small things, right? Okay. All fun put aside. Mask, Chapter 2. Getting to the San Gabriel Mountains, you follow Highway 66 due west from Azusa, then start climbing Angeles Crest Highway that winds through canyons filled with camping and picnic grounds and hundreds of miles of hiking trails. Snow falls in the higher elevations from November to March, and skiing is popular at spots like Mount Waterman, Kratka Ridge, Table Mountain, Blue Ridge, Holiday Hill, and Mount Baldy. But in September, when it's still hot and humid down below, many people take off for the mountains just to get out in the cool, clean, fresh air. That's why the Turks selected Kratka Ridge for their annual blood run. The ridge is actually a mile high with forests of pine and small lakes and streams that gives a feeling of freedom, as if you were entering a different country. Nice. Rusty and Rocky and the group arrived at Kratka Ridge about 1:30 that afternoon and turned off the highway onto a dirt road that led to a clearing and a little lake. Dozers of dozers, dozens of bikes were parked all over the place, mostly Harleys. The field was already alive with Turks and their ladies, some in vampire costumes. And there was a large Red Cross blood mobile with a hand painted sign. If you can't give blood, come in anyway and help. Hold somebody down. Red selected a place to park the bikes and they walked into the clearing together. It was a picnic area with wooden tables and benches, stone barbecue pits, and kegs of beer scattered around. Bunches of Turks ran over to greet them. Men kissed each other and hugged. As usual, Rocky was playfully punched and squeezed and pushed around, just like everybody else. When the bikers in line near the blood mobile spotted Dozer, they took off after him, trying to get him to donate. They began chasing him all over the field, whooping and hollering, the same routine as every year. Rocky, Rusty, Stickman, Red, and Canuck watched with delight. Red was doubled over with laughter. Then he glanced to the side, stopped laughing, and a sweet grin took over. Babe Clark and her son Ben were walking towards him. Babe had all the markings of a veteran biker's lady. Years of sunny days on the back of a bike had taken their toll, but behind the wrinkles, there was a beautiful woman in her late 40s. Her son Ben was 16 then, and Rocky was glad to see him because they'd been best friends before the Clarks moved away about a year ago. Ben had an open, friendly face and beamed when he saw Rocky. Hey, Rocky! Hey, Ben! When'd you get back? Or when did you get back? Just now. Mom didn't want to miss the blood run. Babe flashed Red a look he'd seen before. Haven't missed this in years. Didn't want to break my record. Red smoothed his beard. You're looking good, babe. Rusty came over and gave Babe a warm hug. They've been friends for many years. At that point, Red went off to grab a beer. Rocky and Ben watched the Turks chase Dozer around the field. Nothing's changed around here, Ben said. They still gotta catch Dozer and he still doesn't say anything. Did he ever talk? I've never heard him say a word. Rocky noticed a square bulge in Ben's back pocket. Hey, you got baseball cards in your pocket? Yeah? How'd you know? I can tell by the dimensions of the shape. Can I see them? He took them out. I just started collecting. Rocky couldn't help but smile. Oh yeah? Me too. The boys went off to find a place to sit. Rusty watched them, then put an arm over Babe's shoulder and steered her towards some beer kegs on a nearby picnic table. So, really, how come you're back? Rusty asked. Ed walked out on us, says he's going to Alaska. That's a good place for him. He always deserved better. You always said that. Rusty drew 2 beers in paper cups, and I was always right. The women sipped their beer and watched their sons as the boys straddled a picnic table and displayed their cards. Beyond them, tall pine trees were deep green in the early afternoon sun, sharply etched against an almost cloudless sky. Rock is getting big, Babe said. Couldn't be, 'cause he eats everything that's not tied down. Or could be, 'cause he eats everything that's not tied down. How you doing, Bucks-wise? Rocky still gets disability, and I tend bar once in a while. When there's a full moon on a Tuesday that comes after lilies of the valley bloom in my backyard. Babe laughed softly. That's about how often Ed'll send me money. Who needs it? You take their money, you gotta take their garbage. Exactly. Rusty took a long swallow, looked over at the boys again. Ben's getting a real smart mouth on him. It's the age. It's the age. I think they know everything. A slap upside the head and he don't know anything. Rusty smiled at her son. I never hit my kid. Never? She repeated silently to herself, watching him. Never. And it was literally true. She never hit him, no matter what the provocation, period. It was a promise Rusty made to herself back in 1969 when Rocky was 7 and getting into the kind of mischief that's normal for boys of that age. A promise as solemn as any she'd ever made in her adult life. Me too. I made that promise. A promise made for 2 basic reasons. First, Rocky's condition combined with the fact that he'd reached this so-called age of reason and was in the 2nd grade and started to acquire painful first-hand knowledge of how incredibly cruel kids could be to other kids who happened to be different. That was mental pain inflicted on a daily basis. Pain that would leave indelible scars for the rest of his life. Second, despite constant efforts to stop doing drugs altogether, 1969 was the year Rusty found herself somehow graduating to progressively harder stuff, almost always supplied by Turks, and realizing to her horror the temporary but sometimes uncontrollable mental and physical efforts they could have on her. Hard drinking was an escape of the past by then, but one major difference between alcohol and Drugs often gave her pause. On average, no matter how much she'd had to drink, she still felt a reasonable degree of control mentally. She could be dizzy and slur words and even have blurred vision, but she was conscious of virtually everything she was doing and thinking. On the other hand, drugs, the kind of heavy drugs she was into that year, particularly mescaline, had hallucinogenic effects. More often than not, they would initiate trips over which she had absolutely no control. She would be transported to an entirely different dimension in time and space. 1 minute could seem like an hour, and vice versa, depending on a wide range of variables. The only way she could explain the sensation was to say, I'm there, but I'm not there. I'm me, but I'm not me. I'm like watching myself in a weird movie. Loving Rocky as much as she did, being consistently overprotective, she made certain that he never saw her on hard drugs back then. To the best of her knowledge, even on the few really bad trips she's taken, she'd never been violent. In fact, according to a consensus opinion of the Turks she'd asked, the exact opposite was true. She was passive to the point of appearing almost catatonic. Still, given the unpredictability of the stuff she was into, especially hallucinogens, Rusty made the promise to herself and kept reinforcing it in her mind year after year. Today, 8 years has passed since she made the promise not to ever hit him, and she'd never broken it. She never would. Never. She repeated again silently, sipping her beer, watching him on the picnic bench with Ben. Across the field, Rocky and Ben were oblivious to everything except their baseball cards. Ben was in the process of plunking down each of his cards slowly. Faces turned to Rocky. Almost all were new. Players were still active and not yet valuable to a good collection. Then it happened. Ooh, did you find this card? The next to last card in the stack. Rocky couldn't believe it. He had to bite his cheek to keep from smiling. Incredibly, from a stack of completely average collectibles, there it was. Famous card number 22. Rube Walker, smiling right up at him. Rocky took a couple of silent deep breaths to calm his nerves, waited until Ben slapped down the final card. I don't believe it, Rocky said in his coolest tone. You don't even have a Steve Garvey? Steve Garvey? For Christ's sake? Yeah, I do. I left it at home. You think it's home? You probably lost it. Besides, you got to have a backup for a card like that. It's valuable. Garvey's batting .325, for Christ's sakes. He is? Sure. He's setting him up. Ben nodded. But I don't have anything you want. Yeah, we'd better forget it. Rocky picked up his own stack, looked at Ben's hangdog expression, and the con artist in him took over. He kept his voice soft and humble. I feel like a real jerk, Ben. I've known you for a long time, and if I can't give up my Steve Garvey for an old friend, then I'm a real crud. What a con artist. He slid one of his 3 Steve Garvey cards from between the other 2 and handed it to Ben. Here, you can have it for whatever you got. Anything. Like this one, when he picked out the Rube Walker, he frowned at it, then purposely mispronounced the name. Who's Ruby Walker? Oh, well, I'll take it. And he'd be waiting forever for that card. Okay. He manifested that one. I think he's an older Dodger. Before they came to LA. Rocky slipped the card into his stack. My grandpa says that's when the Dodgers were still the Dodgers. Ben smiled at his Garvey. Hey, thanks a lot, Rocky. As they walked back towards their mothers, Rocky was bursting with pride, even though he felt a little guilty about being a con artist. About the con job. He couldn't wait to show his grandfather. Over the years, he learned the finer points of baseball from his grandfather, Abe Steenberg, who had been following the game himself since he was a child. Abe grew up in New York and used to be a regular at all the Dodgers games at Ebbets Field. He also went to see the Yankees when the Dodgers were on the road, and even the old New York Giants when they played at the Polo Grounds. He saw all the so-called great teams come and go over a period of more than 50 years. He was 67 now and retired in Santa Barbara, and he claimed that the 1955 Dodgers were unquestionably the best. He was the one who first suggested to Rocky that he should start to collect that team, and he was helping out by buying certain cards. The reason Rube Walker was so difficult to find was that he was a reserve catcher on that team, filling in for Roy Campanella, who played 123 games that year, when it was still a 154 game season, and hit .318, one of his best years. Walker only played 48 games, hit .252, and didn't even get into the 1955 World Series when the Dodgers beat the Yankees for their very first series win ever. As Abe explained, Walker was a good catcher and a valuable asset to that team, but he wasn't anywhere near a star. His lifetime average was only .227, so his cards weren't in demand back then. As a result, he was now a rare and valuable card for the kids who were trying to collect the whole 25-man roster of the 1955 Dodgers. Rocky already had some of the biggies pinned up on his board. Roy Campanella, Sandy Koufax, Don Newcomb, Jackie Robinson, and Duke Snider. So with the addition of Rube Walker, that made 6, which left 19 to go. Seemed like a tall order, but somehow he never lost confidence that he'd do it. As Abe told him over and over, you just never know who's got what you just never know who's got what out there. And it was true. He got in Sandy Koufax on a con too. The kid who had him didn't even know Koufax was on the 1955 Dodgers, because Koufax was a 19-year-old rookie that year and didn't even get into the series. On the way back, he tried to be extra nice to Ben. The fact is, he really liked the kid. That was no con. And they'd actually been best friends. I'm really glad you're going to be around, Rocky told him. You remember we used to talk about riding Harleys around Europe? Yeah, I remember. Well, I've been planning to go on my own, but now, since you're here, we can just pick up where we left off. It'll be more fun to think about it if we're both thinking about it at the same time. The field was getting more crowded by the minute. Turks pouring in from all over Southern California, and Rocky couldn't find his mother for a while. Then he saw her at the edge of the field, way off to the left, leaning against a tree and talking with Bone Tyson. Bone was a tall, good-looking guy from San Diego with long hair tied in the back. Rocky ran over to them, and Bowen hit him with a couple of warm high fives. When he turned to go back to Ben, he spotted Gar Evans. He was just getting off his Harley, and all kinds of Turks and their ladies were running over to him with yelps, hugs, and kisses. He was one of the most popular bikers around. Oh, Sam Elliott plays his part. I think Sam Elliott is so sexy. Yeah. Anyway, but that's who plays Gar in the movie. Sam Elliott. What a hottie. Anyway, he was just getting off his Harley, and all kinds of Turks and their ladies were running over to him with yelps, hugs, and kisses. He was one of the most popular bikers around. Of all the men Rusty had gone with, and there had been plenty, Gar was far and away Rocky's personal favorite. He was just over 40 that year. Quite tall, lean, rugged, a woman's man, a man's man, a guy of few words who said what he meant and meant what he said. His face had mileage, and he wore a gold earring in his left earlobe. Gar had a way about him that sometimes reminded Rocky of Dr. Radinsky. He didn't feel he had to constantly prove to you how bright he was, and the man was genuinely bright. Whenever Gar was around, Rocky liked to imagine that he was his dad. He wasn't, but there was an unusually strong bond between them, and Rocky was well aware that his mother had once loved the man. Rocky turned quickly to see if Rusty had seen him yet. She hadn't, but when she saw the expression on her son's face, she knew immediately. She gazed across the clearing until she saw the crowd gathering around Gar. As she expected, he was looking around for her too. Within a short time, his eyes found hers. They stared at each other for a long moment. They hadn't seen each other since the autumn of 1972, when he split for New York, but 5 years hadn't changed her feelings. She's shared 4 years of her life with the man. He'd been one of the original Turks who adopted Rocky and her, and nobody had ever taken his place. Nobody ever would. Not really. Seeing him now brought back a flood of memories and feelings, almost all pleasant, because the mind had a merciful way of wiping out the bad. Isn't that true? She remembered the first day they met, remembered it vividly, July the 27th, 1968. A Saturday afternoon down at the Leopard's Lair, where she was tending bar on the earlier shift, wearing the uniform she hated so much, a skin-tight leopard skin bikini, and serving a bunch of loud-mouthed macho cowboys. From the moment he walked in, sat at the end of the bar away from the others, and ordered a beer, she found it difficult to take her eyes off him, which surprised her. He was 36 then, deeply tanned, rugged, handsome, but so were hundreds of other guys she served. There was just something different about him. A kind of quiet self-confidence in the way he looked differently in her eyes and not at her body. There wasn't any dishonesty about him. She sensed that almost instantly. In fact, he didn't say much at all. She had to take the initiative. Sometimes she rarely did in that job. When she had free minutes, she asked questions. She even remembered most of them. Were you from LA originally? Live here long? What line of work you in? Mechanic? What kind of mechanic? Motorcycles? Harleys? Where? LA? Commute every day? Right. On a Harley? You got it. And he smiled when he said it, A warm, open, that's me, that's who I am type smile. No games. I love that. No games. What you see is what you get. That's hot. Anyway, an hour or so, that's a greaser thing, not a Sochi thing. An hour or so later, when her shift ended, he offered to give her a ride home on the Harley. She accepted. No hesitation at all. She was living with her parents who just moved out from New York. They rented a little house on Borden Avenue. Rocky was 6 then, about to enter first grade in September. He was scheduled to have his picture taken that afternoon by a professional photographer. Gar drove them both to the big event. Turn the bass down a little bit. From that day on, for the next 4 years, all 3 of their lives were altered indelibly until he split. And now he was back. Why? If it's to pick up the pieces, Rusty thought, watching him, it won't be that easy. Rocky ran over to Gar at top speed. Gar! Jumped all over him, as usual. And after Gar hugged him, he held him straight out to take a long, hard look. Yeah, he said, taller? She must be pouring that hard food crud into you. She tries. I really missed you, Gar. You never wrote. Gar put him down then and muzzled his hair. Not too good with words, you know that. This is so great today. Everybody's back. Blood Run always does that. Ben came over on the run. Hey, Gar! Gar reached down, picked Ben up, and gave him a big hug. Rocky decided to go back to Rusty and see if he could talk her into coming over. I gotta go, Gar. See you later. Now, you just hold it a minute, boy. You been okay? Yeah, sure. You still planning that Europe trip run? Rocky glanced at Ben, who was walking away. Yeah, more than ever. Good. How's everybody else? That made Rocky smile. Like who? Gar narrowed his eyes towards Rusty. Like your grandma and grandpa. They're good. Don't get over too much anymore. The drive, you know. We write letters, though. Grandpa sends me baseball cards. Grandma sends me socks. He laughed softly. That's about right. Rocky jerked his head towards Rusty and lied. She talks about you. Yeah, I'll bet she does. He squinted over at her again and gave Rocky a playful slap on the behind. Stop hanging around. Ben's waiting for you. It was less than an hour later that something happened that could have been ugly and possibly dangerous. But that turned out to be funny because of Gar, Red, Dozer, and Canuck. The picnic area was open to the public, of course. So in addition to the Turks, there were other groups milling around that afternoon, including college kids. Rocky and Ben didn't pay any attention to them at all until they were walking past 3 young couples sitting on Vespa motor scooters and drinking cans of beer. One of the scooters had a large Delta Epsilon decal centered on his gas tank. They'd been drinking all afternoon and were feeling no pain. As Rocky and Ben walked past, they began pointing at Rocky and laughing. One of the guys said, "What's wrong with that kid?" Ooh, big mistake. I don't know, a girl said, but he's weird. Then another guy said, he'd make a great mascot for the Sigmas. That really broke them up. All 6 were howling. Hey, kid, one guy said, come here. Rocky and Ben just stood there and looked at them. Ben was frightened, but not Rocky, not really. He'd gone through his routine too many times. Then they saw something that relieved them both. Directly behind the college kids walking towards them fast was the beautiful sight of Gar, Red, Dozer, and Canuck. Gar's voice was calm. "Stay where you're at, Rocky." Caught completely off guard, the three couples took one look and knew they were in big trouble. Gar and Red were first to reach out. "Red," Gar said slowly, "you know why God made scooters? So asses would have something to sit on, right?" Instantly, the kids panicked, dropping their beer cans and fell over each other trying to get the scooters started. Gar, Red, Dozer, and Canuck stood there, arms folded, blocking the way. One kid was going nuts trying to start his engine. Dozer sashayed up to him, 300 pounds of black leather cool, lifted the kid boldly off his seat, set him down, picked up the scooter as if it were a toy, and shook the hell out of it. He put it down carefully, picked up the kid again, slammed him back on the seat. To the astonishment of everyone, the scooter started now on the first try. The Turks stepped aside then, game over, and the three scooters squealed and careened into each other as they sputtered away in clouds of dust. Arms folded, Gar, Red, Dozer, and Canuck gazed down at Rocky and Ben and flashed a set of big grins. The night the Turks built campfires in the stone barbecue pits around the field, and transistor radios played as some of the women danced in the firelight. Rocky and Ben huddled in blankets near their fire and watched Rusty and a couple of other women dance around it. Even though the music was fast, Rusty moved slow and cat-like in a kind of self-styled belly dance, off in a world of their own. As usual, her dance attracted Turks from all over, I can imagine. Women, too, and before long, she had a good-sized crowd. Stickman and Canuck shoved each other out of the way to get in the front row. Faces looked hypnotized in the flicker and glow of the fire. When Rusty was the lone dancer, she decided to make the boys sweat a little. First, she zeroed in on young Canuck and did her bump and grind number up close, touching him. The crowd exploded with cat calls and whistles. Canuck was turned on like crazy. Next, she went after Stickman. Plenty of pelvic action, bumping him slowly and softly. Stickman couldn't stand it. He grabbed her, but she slapped free. He grabbed for her again, but Canuck shoved him away. At that point, Stickman and Canuck started a mock fight that looked just this side of getting serious. Meanwhile, Rusty continued making her rounds of the men. Gar moved into the front row. His face seemed mesmerized as he concentrated on her hips. As soon as she saw him, she danced in his direction and became noticeably more sensuous. When she was only a few feet away, she gave him a slow smile. Gar didn't smile back. Red's voice from the crowd, "How about little Egypt?" That got a tremendous roar. Everybody liked that routine. Rusty stopped dancing, glanced around. "Where's Rocky?" A couple of Turks grabbed Rocky and pushed him up front. Somebody snapped off the transistor radio. Two guitars were tuned up in a hurry, and Red pulled out his harmonica. Word spread fast, and more people started running over to catch the act. Little Egypt was the most popular duet that Rusty and Rocky did, and they had it down cold. Rocky launched into the introduction in a loud circus Hawker's voice complete with arm gestures. Step right up, folks. See little Egypt do her famous dance of the pyramids. She walks, she talks, she crawls on her belly like a reptile. One thin dime, 1/10 of a dollar. Step right up, folks. To the to the accompaniment of guitars, harmonica, and many hands clapping with the beat, Rusty whirled into her dance, and Rocky joined her in the opening lyrics. I went and bought myself a ticket, and I sat down in the very front row. She came out strutting, wearing nothin' but a button and a bow, singing yin yang, yin yang, yin yang. Rusty took the next line solo. She had a ruby in her tummy and a diamond big as Texas in her toe. Now it was all Rocky's. She did a triple somersault, and when she hit the ground, she winked at the audience, and then she turned around. She had a picture of a cowboy tattooed on her spine saying Phoenix, Arizona, 1949. The Turks, nearly 100 strong now, went absolutely wild as usual, screaming, hooting, whistling, jumping up and down. Rusty broke into her familiar hoochie coochie and acknowledged Rocky with a sweeping gesture of her arm. Two Turks grabbed Rocky, hoisted him over their heads, and carried him around the fire while he waved to all of his fanatic fans. It was a weird scene in the firelight, everyone enjoying it to the hilt, save one. Gar Evans stared at the fire, his face almost expressionless. Several minutes later, when the crowd had thinned out, he was still standing there motionless. Rusty studied him for a moment, then walked over slowly. Didn't you like it? She asked quietly. I've seen it before. So Sam Elliott. Not as close as I have, she smiled. So how were things back east? Younger. The smile vanished fast. She tossed her long hair back and walked away quickly. Gar smiled then, watching her. More than a dozen fires still glowed in the barbecue pits, giving Rusty enough light to cross the clearing and join Bone and a bearded little biker they called John the Baptist, who'd been pushing drugs for years. Now, ceremoniously, John handed her a cigarette that was smaller than the typical joint of pot. Firelight moved on her face. His voice had the usual solemnity. This little baby's been dusted with angel wings. Angel does. Gar could see well enough to watch her take a hard hit of the PCP joint, although he didn't know what it was. He walked to a nearby campfire where a small crowd had gathered around a straw picnic basket, holding a litter of black Labrador puppies. They were 6 weeks old, and one of the bikers' ladies was giving them away. Rocky was there, and Gar watched him pick one up, ever so gently, kissed him, and told him and held him against his cheek. A ball of black fuzz, soft and warm, with huge black eyes. Rocky had never had a dog. Rusty wouldn't let him, but this one was special. He had to show her. Now, fast. He spotted Gar, handed him the puppy, asked him to hold it until he found his mother. When he found her, she was taking another toke on the PCP joint. He ran up to her and pretended he didn't notice. Mom, I gotta show you something. She smiled at Bone and John, shrugged, and let Rocky pull her on the run to the small crowd where Gar was. Dozer was there now, petting the puppy. Gar handed it over carefully and Rocky held it up to his mother. No way, she said flatly. Oh, Mom, please, please. I gotta have him. No, dog. Why? I said no. Give me one good reason. She tossed back her hair. I'll give you two. Number one, he'll bark all the time. Number two, I'm not spending my time shoveling up piles of number two. I'll do it. Oh, sure you will. You'll play with those baseball cards or stare at your map while I take care of the dog. Rocky turned slowly, kissed the puppy, placed him back in the basket, then muttered several strong curses under his breath. Gar snapped his words. You watch your mouth in front of your mother. When they returned home, it was just past midnight. Dozer had beaten all of them. He was the only one who had driven solo, and they saw him coming out of the house as they revved down and stopped out front. Rusty behind Bone, Babe behind Red, Rocky behind Stickman, Ben behind Canuck. After Bone wheeled his bike into the driveway, he and Rusty said goodnight to everybody and headed for the house. Rocky thanked Stickman for the ride, said goodnight to all of them, including Dozer, then waved as they roared off. All the houses on both sides of the Blair Street were dark now, except for the night lights on the porches. The Dennis house was about average for that neighborhood. One story of weathered stucco with a sloping red Spanish tile roof. The living room was small and sparsely furnished. There were 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, and an eat-in kitchen. Rocky was very tired and decided to go straight to bed. Rusty and Bone had gone into the kitchen. He shouted goodnight to them and went to his room. First things first, he fanned through his stack of regular cards, took out his new Rube Walker, examined it closely, then carefully inserted it into a bag. That would be the first card in the second row on the bulletin board. He pinned it in place to the left and stepped back. That looked good. He was making real progress now, less than 4 rows to go. Now he squinted at the board, tried to imagine how it would appear when it was finished. Just a few moments after he undressed, climbed into bed, and turned off the lamp, he heard a strange sound in the room, like a very soft screech. He waited, and he heard it again. Finally, he turned on the lamp and sat up. Screech! Screech! It was coming from under his bed. He jumped out, got down on his hands and knees, and looked under. In the dim light, he saw a tiny ball of black fuzz with 2 huge watery eyes looking out at him hopefully. He got the puppy. Dozer snuck the puppy. Oh my God! He reached under, pulled the puppy out gently, pressed him against his face and kissed him. The puppy was so frightened he was shaking all over. Rocky began crying then. He couldn't help it. He hadn't thought he had ever seen him again. Then it hit him. Dozer, of course. That was why Dozer hadn't wanted anybody to ride with him. Gar probably had told him how much he'd wanted it. And that's all it took for a guy like Dozer. Tucked the little thing in his jacket and raced him home. Dozer did stuff like that. So did Gar. They really cared about him. They didn't go around saying they cared. Dozer couldn't do that anyway, but they went ahead and showed you. Finally, he turned off the lamp, took the puppy to bed with him, and cuddled him in the dark to reassure him, to keep him from shaking. After a while, the dog began licking Rocky's hands and face and made soft purring sounds. Rocky was sure it was the very first night the puppy had ever been away from its mother and family. Before falling asleep, he began to wonder how Rusty would react when she discovered him. He didn't have to wait long. At 6:20, just before dawn, he was awakened by the metallic sound of his doorknob turning. The door opened very slowly, letting in a widening triangle of soft light, and he saw the dark silhouette of his mother standing there. Even in that dim light, Rusty couldn't miss the puppy. He was right on the pillow next to the boy's face, still sound asleep. Rocky wasn't fully awake yet, but he gave his mother a warm smile. "Dozer?" she asked quietly. He smiled wider and nodded. She took a deep breath, sighed, then pulled back the blanket and sheet and climbed in with him. Rocky moved the puppy to make room, and he didn't wake up. Rusty curled up and remained silent for a few moments. That's when Rocky knew for sure it would be okay. He just knew. Just before Rusty fell asleep, she mumbled, "I'm going to make that fat, miserable creep eat 30 pounds of dog food. Trouble is, he probably love it." So she didn't know. I love Dozer. You do. When you watch the movie, Dozer's pretty cool. He doesn't say a word, but he's big. He doesn't have to talk. Okay, so let's upload this. And Jake will be home shortly, so I'm going to spend a little time with him. And I'm awake, so I think that probably in an hour or so, we're going to get into chapter 3. Why? Because I love this book. And I love you, right? All right, misfits, underdogs, and little minis that are sneaking on my channel. Stay tuned, gear down, relax, and come back for chapter 3 of Mask. Yeah, that's right. All right. I love you. Bye. Ah.